Hello again, football fans. This is Anthony coming back at you with Two Fat Guys Fantasy Football. Today we're going to be continuing our series of team offseason breakdown videos. Today we're going to be looking at the Los Angeles Chargers. As always, let's jump right into it and take a look at what this roster looked like at the end of last season. So this is a team that everyone kind of expected to compete with Kansas City for that title. They expected them to kind of push for that, and unfortunately, this season it never really materialized. The Chargers are a team that, as talented as they are, they seem to be cursed. There's always injury issues that pop up that keep this team from achieving its max potential. This year we dealt with some injuries to both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, had quite a few injuries on defense as well. So it is a team that fell short of their expectations. But when you look at the talent on the roster, it is a roster that is capable of being extremely competitive, especially when you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert now is becoming a veteran in the league. He's still a young player, though, still developing each and every year, adding to his game, and he's already one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's a guy that can do everything you want on the field. He's got enough mobility to keep plays alive. He can make every throw. Has incredible accuracy and awareness, and uh, he makes the guys around him better, which is what you always want out of your quarterback. So he's a guy that is a foundational building block for this team moving forward. From the skill positions, it's a great group led by Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler has been a fantasy gold mine in the last few years. He's a guy that if you have him on your fantasy roster, you are probably competing for the championship. It's kind of that simple. So he's a guy that has outperformed what was expected of him, and just it has been extremely good for the team. At wide receiver, you have a nice group with Keenan Allen, who can do some great things on the field. He is one of the best route runners in the NFL. He has great cuts. He is always at the right spot. He's a guy that is incredibly reliable for Herbert. Always kind of is where he's supposed to be. Does give you some good run after the catch ability. Doesn't have home run speed, but he always gets a little more than what's expected of him. On the other side, a nice compliment to him is Mike Williams. Mike Williams is a much larger receiver, 6'4", 220. Does have better speed, better long speed than just kind of, um, yeah. He always seems to be a bigger deep threat than what he is. Great contested catch guy, great jump ball guy. Real red zone threat. Always gives you that touchdown upside in fantasy. Nice guy to have around. Unfortunately, last year, like I said, he dealt with some injury issues. Their third receiver last year, Josh Palmer, kind of developed into that guy. Really gave the team some quality play when the others were out with injury. So he stepped in and did really well. And I think that's really going to help his development as well. I think he's going to be a nice complementary third receiver for the team. At the tight end position, they brought in Gerald Everett last year as a free agent, and he's a great seam threat, good speed for the position. He's a good blocker for the position. Maybe not the best blocking tight end, but he's not a liability as a blocker either. He gives you um, enough blocking that he can be on the field in any set, which creates some mismatch opportunities for both him and other players. So he's a nice for fantasy streaming option, if nothing else. But he's also kind of just a middle tier um, tight end one in this offense. So good guy to have around. The offensive line has been a point of emphasis for the Chargers in the last few years. They drafted a couple years ago Rashawn Slater, who has developed into an extremely solid left tackle, a guy coming out of Northwestern that can kind of do it all. So he gives some credibility to Peter Skronsky, who was in this year's draft. He Skaronski's kind of a similar mold to what Rashawn Slater did at Northwestern. They both play at Northwestern, so it's not unreasonable to expect a similar type of development curve out of Skaronski. Um, on the other side, we did draft this year both Zion Johnson and Jamari Sawyer, two guys that really solidified the right side of that line. Zion Johnson is a guy out of Boston College that I really liked last year. I thought he was probably the best guard in the class, and he kind of played like it. He got better almost every game. You could see improvement. So he was learning as he went and making adjustments and really kind of development. And if he can continue that type of development, um, they've got a real star on their hands at the guard position. Jamari Sawyer was a guy that was taken a little bit later in the draft out of Georgia. So he has that championship pedigree in the SEC competition and performed pretty well. Had some miscues, but all in all, he did really, really well for the team. And I think if he can continue to develop, they might have a long-term solution at both spots. Corey Lindsley is a very good center, a nice anchor piece in the center of that line. So a very good, solid offensive line that gave Herbert plenty of time to uh, make some good plays around the field. On defense, this is a defense that I think everyone expected to be better than it was. Unfortunately, the injury bug hit. Both Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack missed some time. J.C. Jackson, who was their prize free agent signing, uh, missed a ton of time as well. So it's a defense that, if you looked at it preseason, should have been one of the best in the league. Having Mack and Bosa out there on opposite sides um, should provide one of the best pass rushes in the game. But unfortunately, like I said, they both missed some time. If these guys can both stay healthy, these corners are going to look even better than they already are. So it's a good group here. Kyle Van Noy was brought in to give them some nice rotational veteran leadership. Played well when called upon. So a very nice core. Kenneth Murray Jr. Is another kid out of Oklahoma, drafted a few years ago. Um, Needs to show me something this year. He's got all the potential in the world, but unfortunately, it hasn't developed, I think, in the way anybody expected him to. He's still almost the same player that he was when he was drafted. He hasn't gotten much better. So I'm hoping that he can take that next step and become a real contributor. Um, on the back end, Derwin James, for my money, is the best safety in the league. He is a guy that can really do it all. He's a free safety. He's a cornerback. He's a strong safety. He's a linebacker. Um, Probably the best chess piece around as long as he can stay healthy. And that's been his biggest issue is being able to stay on the field. When he's on the field, he's a guy that can make every play. He doesn't really get beat by anything. Uh, he's always around the football. He's not afraid to make the big hits. He's doesn't miss many tackles. He's a guy that just is. He's the best. He's the measuring stick right now. So on the other side, on that safety duo, we had kind of veteran journeyman Nasir Adderley filling that spot. They did draft J.T. Woods out of Baylor last year, who is a guy that I really want to see how his development uh, continues. I liked him a fair bit coming out for especially for where he was drafted. I think he's got some potential. He's a little raw, but he's got great speed, great size for the position. And I think basically having a red shirt year behind Nasir Adderley really could have helped him quite a bit. So I'm curious to see what he does in this his second year. At the quarterback room, would have been led by J.C. Jackson. Unfortunately, injury kind of derailed that. But when healthy, J.C. Jackson is a true lockdown corner. He's a guy that offers great coverage abilities. Um, He's very, very competitive. Maybe not the biggest cornerback, but he's going to go up and compete with everybody, regardless of how much size they might have on him. He's very, very good. On the other side of that cornerback room is a guy that I loved coming out with, and that's Asante Samuel Jr. Asante Samuel Jr. was my favorite cornerback in his class, and he's a guy that has really shown the capability of being uh, very similar to what his father was in the NFL. He's getting better every year. He's very competitive. Um, a very, very good corner, and especially a very good second corner. The slot corner last year was Bryce Callahan. Bryce Callahan at this point has been around for a while, but he's still one of the best slot corners around. So this is a room and a team that on paper should have been incredibly competitive, but unfortunately, due to injuries, which are always the great equalizer, they really kind of fell short of their expectations for the year. So let's take a look at see what has happened with this team as the offseason has progressed and as we're getting closer to the draft. So as we jump into the roster, we'll take a look and see that on offense, nothing much has changed. Um, this offense is led by the same pieces: Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, and Jordan Everett. The unfortunate thing is that Austin Eckler has requested a trade. He's unhappy with his contract, and I don't blame him. He has outperformed his contract immensely. He signed a very team-friendly deal a few years ago and has really outplayed it every year. So he wants to get paid like one of the top backs. I'm not sure he will be. He's going to be 28. This will be his third contract, and you don't give 28-year-old running backs big third contracts. I want nothing but the best for him, but I'm not sure that there's another spot where he can have the fantasy impact or the standard NFL just football impact as he does here. And the Chargers have not shown any inclination to renegotiate that contract. So we'll see what happens with that. Last year they drafted Isaiah Spiller to potentially be that heir apparent, and I will admit that I missed on him. I liked the landing spot. I thought he would be able to compete, but unfortunately last year in the limited opportunities that he got, he did not look very good at all, and I don't expect much from him. Now, if he can make a big leap and really develop off of what he showed last year, maybe. But as it stands right now, Josh Kelly is the primary backup, and really last year outperformed Isaiah Spiller in every single way. There was nothing that Isaiah Spiller brought that Joshua Kelly wasn't just better at. So um, this offense will look a little bit differently, I think, but we still have to wait and see. Now on defense, the biggest thing that happened was the team signed Eric Kendricks away after he was cut by Minnesota in a salary cap move. Eric Kendricks is a Pro Bowl middle linebacker, one of the best tackling middle linebackers around the last few years. He's a tackle machine. He's a great leader. He's going to bring a lot to the center of this defense. He's going to make it a lot harder for opposing offenses just with his presence. He's been that good. I think the other thing that's very good about Eric Kendricks is I think he can actually help the development of Kenneth Murray. I think Kenneth Murray becomes a better player by playing with Eric Kendricks. As we mentioned before, if these two, Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, can stay healthy, they should provide arguably one of the best pass rushes in the NFL. This is an incredibly talented pass rush duo. So I'd be interested to see what they can do in a full season if they can both stay healthy. At the back end, Derwin James is still the safety. JT Woods is going to get his shot as a starter, I think. It's a position they may look at in the draft, but we'll see. Corner, Bryce Callahan is gone. Michael Davis is in. Still a very solid slot corner. Um, so going into the draft, this is a team that doesn't present with many holes. You could say we need to take a look at left guard. For now, I think Trey Pipkins steps into that spot and fills that hole for them. I don't think that they see it as a glaring need. Definitely a spot that they could address. Um, Wide receiver is potentially a spot they could address. Running back, D line is an option. Like I said, it's a good D line. It's solid, but it's not great. Or they could potentially look at safety. So they've got some options here. There's a lot of different ways they could go, but let's take a look and see what the draft might look like for them. So if we jump in here and let's take a look at where they're picking in the draft. They're going to be picking 21st. So if we scroll down to around the 20s, we've got guys like Quentin Johnston, Bijan Robinson, Kalijah Cansey, Deontay Banks, Broderick Jones, Cam Smith, Miles Murphy, Jordan Addison, Osiris Torrance, Brian Breesy. A lot of names, a lot of talent down here at this spot. This is, for me, kind of one of the sweet spots of the first round. I think you're going to see a lot of guys and a lot of movement in the draft for guys positioning to get the guys that they want. Um, for me, when I've been doing my mocks, I've found it hard not to have Bijan Robinson land with the Chargers. I think it just makes too much sense. Um, I think Bijan Robinson steps in and is, as odd as this is going to sound, I think he almost provides an instant upgrade over Austin Eckler. He can do all the same things that Eckler does, and he comes in just as simply he has more pure raw talent. Um, he'll have to develop a little bit, but I think you could plug Bijan Robinson in and not miss a beat in that offense. He does everything well. He's 6 foot 220. He's a great pass catcher. He's got more than enough speed for the position. He can run away from people when he gets into the open field. He doesn't take many big hits. He's fairly elusive. He breaks a lot of tackles. He breaks more tackles than just about anybody in college football did last year. He's not afraid of contact. He doesn't. He takes on contact when he needs to. Always seems to fall forward. He's a great route runner. One of the best pass catching backs I've seen in a while. He is truly a do it all around generational running back. He is the the best rated player on my board. He's number one for me in terms of pure talent. Unfortunately, like I said before, um, the draft value isn't there for running backs anymore. But he is a guy that is absolutely worth a first round pick, and he is potentially worth a top 10 pick. But I don't see anybody there that takes that leap. So I think he falls here, and this is a spot where, for fantasy, he's a first round pick. So if we're not looking at Bijan Robinson, this is another spot where we might be looking at Osiris Torrance, kind of to plug that guard spot right in. If he's available, I think it makes a lot of sense there. We could also look at corner. At corner, the name that I'd be interested in because I think the top three will be gone would be Deontay Banks. Deontay Banks out of Maryland. Good size for the position. Gives you something that Asante Samuel and J.C. Jackson don't. Good speed for the position. Needs to clean up his coverage skills a little bit, but he's a guy that could come in and absolutely push for playing time as a rookie. Could maybe be that number two corner, let Asante play a pure slots corner. It would be a good group there. Another interesting name would be Brian Branch. This is a spot where you could consider him. This would make sense. He's a guy that can play some slot corner. He's a guy that can play a lot of free safety out of Alabama. He has ideal size for both a slot corner or free safety. So Good size, decent speed, is a good all-around player. An interesting name to keep an eye on, where he lands in the draft and how he's announced. I'm curious to see whether he gets announced as a safety or as a corner. Um, the other spot that we could look at would be kind of the tackles and the ends. Kalijah Cansey would be a name to look at. He's a guy that could play your end spot in the 3-4. He's maybe a little undersized for the nose, but he could come in and could probably do that for you. He brings comparisons probably unfairly to Aaron Donald when Aaron Donald was drafted, but they do have similar body types and similar raw skill sets. So it'd be interesting to see that. I think that would be an interesting name. Um, the other names would be that I would keep an eye on. Um, Brian Breesy, Miles Murphy. One of these two guys will probably still be here, and would could make a lot of sense on that D line to help strengthen that. So, all in all, if we're looking at this roster now versus what it was at the end of the season, I actually think this is a roster that has gotten better since the offseason began. The addition of Eric Kendricks really makes a big difference for me. I think Pipkins mitigates the loss of the guard, so I think that's kind of a wash. But I think the biggest question for this team, as it always is can they stay healthy? If they can stay healthy and they're in a much better spot already than they were last year, I think they do draft Bijan Robinson, which allows them to trade Austin Eckler and see what kind of return that they can get for that. So that's going to do it for me and our look at the Chargers today. As always, feedback is appreciated and desired. If you have an idea on somebody uh, that we should look at, or a player we should look at, or somebody that you think I'm too high on, please let me know in the comments. If you have an idea as to what team we should look at next, love to hear that as well. Um, but as always, like I said, we're going to continue this until we get through every team. Once we get through every team, it'll take us right up to draft time. And then once the draft happens and things settle out with the rosters as we start to get into off-season activities, we will revisit all of these teams and take a look at some potential fantasy impacts going into the season. But as I said, that's going to do it for me. Thanks as always. I appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time.